This is Andy McNeill, and welcome to another edition of Free Arkansas. And I'm excited today to have Bryan Sanders, the first gentleman of Arkansas. Bryan, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you. So we're going to talk to Bryan about a couple different things, but predominantly we're going to talk about the outdoors and just different outdoor recreation activity here in the state of Arkansas. But I wanted to start at a different spot. So we have something in common. So we're both not from Arkansas. And so we both married women from Arkansas to get us here. So I want to tell you a quick story, and then I want to get your view on the same story. So, two things. So one is I remember the first time that I came to Arkansas. So I didn't know anything about Arkansas. I was this Atlanta kid. And one of the things that I remember is driving on I-40. I was on my way to my first job in Springdale, Arkansas. Never been to the state. I drove with all of my stuff. And I remember when I got to the mountains right around Atkins that I thought, you know what? I can do this. I really like this place. And when I got up to Northwest Arkansas, I always felt like I would never leave this place if there was a beach close by, because I thought it was so cool. What's your first thing about Arkansas that you go like, okay, this is what I really love?
Yeah. So I'd been to Arkansas once as a kid. Growing up in Kansas City, we did a family trip. I think we hit Eureka and Hot Springs over the course of a long weekend, but I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. So I didn't really have many kind of core memories from Arkansas one trip. Sarah and I met actually working for her dad when he was running for president in 2008 out in Iowa. We started dating by the end of that campaign. I'm not sure how often I tell this story, but she was actually my boss.
Oh, she was? I didn't know that part.
Her dad, of course, former pastor, our boss. And one night, somehow I had the audacity to tell her, she was dating somebody else at the time, that this is going to happen, but you're going to need to break up with your boyfriend first. And the next one, I'm like, I'm not sure if I still have a job, but thankfully, she did break up with her boyfriend that very next day. And we went out on our first date that night and been married now for 15 years. I followed her to Arkansas in 2008. And much like you, I remember it was one of the first weekends here. We went up and we floated the Buffalo River. And I could not believe that this was so close to where I'd grown up in Kansas City and I knew nothing about it. I was blown away just by the epic just beauty of that area of the state and just immediately fell in love with it and knew like you that I could definitely make this place my home.
Yeah, the Buffalo is a really special place. There's no question about it. I know that you like to hunt with your sons. Do you like particular places in the state to go hunting?
Interestingly, I grew up, like I said, in Kansas City. We had a family ranch about an hour south of Kansas City. It was my grandfather's place. Spent weekends there growing up. My dad didn't hunt. My grandfather didn't hunt. So I never was initiated into it. Did a lot of fishing, four-wheeling, may have thrown a few unsanctioned parties out there during high school, but wasn't a hunter. But when I followed Sarah to Arkansas, I knew very quickly that if I didn't pick up duck hunting, I definitely wasn't going to get her father's permission to marry her. So I picked up duck hunting. Not a deer hunter, though, until really my sons now, who are 12 and 10, have really gotten into it. And of course, as I'm sure you know, with young boys, deer hunting is a great way to get started. There's fewer variables to control for. It's much safer than being out there in flooded timber with boys trying to hunt with a group of men. And so my boys have gotten into deer hunting. They each killed their first does the last couple seasons, and just this last month, each of them have killed their first bucks. And
really?
As a father, there's few things that I've done more exhilarating, even though I'm not a deer hunter, few things more exhilarating than being out there in a deer stand with your boys and having them kill their first bucks.
So you were not involved in cleaning the deer, I suppose, then?
I had a friend of mine take care of that.
It's fun. It's funny with my wife, because I was a city kid. Her family, even though she was from Russellville, part of her family is all from Stuttgart. And even though I was a really big outdoor guy, so I loved hiking and rock climbing and things like that, that wasn't at the time, because this is back in the 80s, that wasn't considered outdoors enough, and so you weren't really considered outdoorsman until you actually went hunting. And so, they quickly indoctrinated me into the program, and so, I heard you tell different stories about just your mountain biking. Are there other things and the buffalo here? What else about the outdoors, is part of your past and what you're really passionate about?
Yes, I'm actually relatively new to mountain biking. So loved skiing growing up. I actually narrowed down my college search when I was growing up in Kansas City in high school to only colleges and universities within an hour of a ski resort.
Okay.
So I applied at colleges in Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont and Colorado, more or less. Ended up going to a small college, Colby College in Waterville, Maine. Did a lot of skiing up there. Absolutely loved to ski. But didn't start mountain biking until actually Sarah and I moved back here after her time in the White House in 2019. And I kept hearing kind of the same question from people like, oh, so you live in Arkansas, like you must mountain bike, during my time in DC, actually. And it was interesting, and I hadn't really thought about it much before. I knew what was going on in Bentonville, mountain bike capital world and all that, but had never really done much mountain biking myself, maybe a little bit on outward bound trips as a kid. But when we moved back in 2019, I decided, you know what? I've heard this enough now. Like, if you don't mountain bike in Arkansas, that's like living in Colorado,
right.
Utah, not skiing. So I went out, got my first mountain bike, and just immediately just fell in love with it. It kind of checks all the boxes for me. So if I'm by myself and I have some free time, that is what I love to do in the outdoors in Arkansas more than anything else. I still love to duck hunt, love to fly fish. I love all things Arkansas outdoors, but if there's, top of the list for me, it's certainly mountain biking.
So I'm curious. I know what I love about mountain biking because I spend a lot of time mountain biking around the state. Tell me for you, like, what is the thing about it that you like? And I'll tell you I'll see if it's true to be close to what mine is. But tell me what you think of what's your thing that you like the best.
I think for me, like when I say it checks the boxes, number one, you're out there getting exercise.
Right.
Number two, it's not like running in that there's like an adrenaline rush with it. And then finally you're out in, some of the most beautiful places, the outdoors in our state. And so you combine all those things together, and the fact that you can just do it out your back door. I mean, you think about skiing. I mean, you've got to, even if you live in Denver, Colorado, you're loading up your SUV and driving probably through traffic 2 hours,
right,
to get out to ski resort, having to buy a lift ticket and all that. Once you've got a mountain bike, I mean, depending on the community you live in, I'm in Little Rock. I can get out to Pinnacle Mountain State Park to the Monument Trail System there in 15 minutes on my bike, and I'm out in wilderness, so close to the city. The access, the ease of access, the close proximity to just epic trails all across our state is really something unique and special about Arkansas.
One of the things, and I completely agree with you on some of the trails. One of the things I really like about it is I think you have to really be present. So I started off as being a road cyclist, and you can zone out. Now, like that could be dangerous, right? With cars whipping by you and like stuff you could roll over. But to me, I think when you're mountain biking, it's got all of this combination of things. Like you're out in the woods, you don't have to worry about cars. But you have to be really, really present. Do you like to gravel bike as well? Do you do any of that around here?
I've done a little bit of gravel cycling, not as much, but I think that's a really good point. In today's world, you're on your phone, you're connected at all times, and that's not healthy.
Yeah.
But when you're on your mountain bike, like you can't afford to not be paying attention. You take your eyes off the trail for, a split second. It could be, involve some pretty serious consequences. And so you have to really be dialed in and focused, and it takes your mind off of everything else that's going on in the world and allows you just to be focused on what's directly in front of you on the trail. And I think there's something about that is really, really healthy.
So in terms of trails, so IMBA is the International Mountain Biking Association, and they've got one course here in Arkansas that's epic. And it's a little obscure. I've only done it one time. Do you know what it is by chance?
So there's actually more than one.
Is there more than one?
IMBA
Okay.
Epic. So you've got the Womble.
Yes, the Womble.
And the Washoe, which I've done, is an amazing trail. Then you've got the Lovett Trail, which is by Lake Washita. I've done that one as well. Then you've got Buffalo Headwaters up in the Upper Buffalo as well. Those three, actually, in the Sylamore. 4. So I think you now have 4 IMBA Epics in the state.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I've done the Womble. Did you do it end to end? I did it like sunrise to dark practically.
I want to say we covered about, if I remember correctly, about 17, 18 miles. I don't know if that was the full length of the trail, but we did most of it.
Are you doing any racing? Are you doing anything like,
I really haven't gotten into racing. It's funny. We were opening up a new trail that we built up at White River Bull Shoals White River State Park up near Mountain Home. And it's relatively small trail system, maybe 8 to 10 miles. But they had the NICA team from the Mountain Home.
Oh, they did.
High school up there. And so they all came out for the opening. And I, of course, wanted to ride. So I ride with all these kids. These kids, I mean, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Just crush you.
They're smoking me out there. Like I realized, I thought I was in decent shape. I realized very quickly the other day, it put me in my place and humbled me that these kids are a lot better cyclists, a lot better shape than I am.
It is always humbling like that when you get with somebody who just can literally crush it.
Yep.
So I did a race the other day. This is actually a couple months ago, but it was 40 miles on a mountain bike, which is a long distance. And I got killed by people that when I looked at them beforehand, and I wasn't judgmental, but I could have been, where I looked and said, I think I'm going to beat that person. And then, nope, they just literally crushed me. And, there's so much to it. I think that, one of the things I think it's done for the state, and I've heard you say this. I heard you say this today about, people's impression of Arkansas, over a period of time. And I know that as I travel, because I have the opportunity, to travel quite a bit, and, people, I think there's been this change of how people view Arkansas over the last number of years. And I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but a lot of it I attribute to what's going on in Bentonville. Do you experience the same thing where people really know like some of the exciting things out there? And it's not just mountain biking. There's a lot of things going on up there. Right.
Yeah. And I shared this earlier today, but I remember one of the first times I ever met Tom Walton. This was back right as Sarah first started running for governor. And I asked him why he moved back to Arkansas. Because, of course, he had grown up in Bentonville, went off to college. He was in northern Arizona, and then lived in Colorado for a number of years. And I said, what motivated you to come back? He's like, my whole life I've had the chance to travel the country, travel the world. And I've always had a chip on my shoulder about Arkansas. Because, of course, I love Arkansas. But, I heard a lot of people over the years just frankly, talk shit about our state.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off. And I wanted to come back and do something about it. And so that's exactly what he's done. Like Tom and his brother Stuart, they decided, you know what? We're going to make Bentonville, Arkansas, the mountain biking capital of the world, which is interesting because Bentonville doesn't have any mountains. It's relatively flat. So everybody said that's ridiculous, never happened. Well, of course, they cast that impossible vision and then they made it happen. And now you got people, go to a trailhead, or just to, the square in downtown Bentonville, you see license plates from all across the country.
Oh, yeah.
Bike racks on the back, people traveling from all across the country and the world to ride there. And so I really think they've helped the state in a really meaningful way in terms of the image and the perception of Arkansas as an outdoor destination, because people are now, I think people are always familiar with Arkansas. It's the natural state. It's been our brand for many decades now. And there's always been great opportunities to get outdoors. But I think most people probably associate Arkansas maybe with duck hunting. Maybe if you're a fly fisherman, the White River.
Yep.
I've certainly had the opportunity to fly fish in some of the greatest places in America. My first time I ever went up to Montana, I remember I was fly fishing the Madison. My guide asked me, "Where are you from?" I told him Arkansas. He said, "Well, what the hell are you doing out here?" He's like, "You could have stayed home in Arkansas and fished the White and caught a lot more fish and a lot, bigger, trophy browns than you're ever gonna find here in the Madison River." And I was taken aback by that. Like I knew we had something special, but to hear that in Montana was compelling to me. But I think what Tom and Stuart have done is they really have helped rebrand our state. And there's so much more we can do from the state level to continue to drive that message forward that Arkansas really, truly is a world-class destination for outdoor recreation.
Yeah. I think that, and their team too. I assume you know Gary Vernon.
I do very well. Yeah, Gary's outstanding. Yeah.
All the folks in a number of their entities. And I know they just recently bought, Horseshoe Canyon. I don't know if you've been out there. I've been out there over the years a ton of times. Well, I agree with you. The state has a lot of opportunity. I'm going to tee up how I think about it and just want to get your reaction. And then what I want to do is I want to hear about some of the stuff that maybe you're involved with, you hear about, see, or think about the ways that we can capture, share. So, when I look at the state, I sort of look at everything from a jobs perspective. So I think we're in an arms race for jobs. I think to create jobs, there's a lot of elements. Safety, taxation, cost of living. But I do think the recreational outdoor aspect, things that are fun to do, are really important. And, Arkansas, I think they had somewhere right around, 8 million tourists last year that came to the state to go to our state parks. I think I've got that number. I know that I heard a number earlier today that was a little bigger, but I think that's all tourism
I think it's
number.
10 million for state park.
Is it 10?
Visitation, and then 50 million visitors statewide. Now, how you break that 50 million down, I don't know exactly, but that number continues to grow.
What I thought was interesting, though, when you start looking at the statistics, though, is that nationally, going to state parks, there's 800 million people that go to state parks. So that's a pretty big market for us to tap into to bring people to the state. So I think we've done a great job, but I think there's other things that we probably can do in the future to bring people in that are going to other places to attract jobs. I don't have the exact numbers, but perhaps, you got a perspective on the impact of those 10 million people coming to the state. You got a sense of what that is from a numerical perspective?
Yeah, so tourism brings in about 10 billion to our state's economy each year. I mentioned the 50 million visitors. In terms of the outdoor economy, it's roughly 7 billion or so. Yeah. So it's a meaningful impact. The only industry that's bigger than tourism in Arkansas is agriculture.
Yeah.
And so it matters to jobs, it matters to economic development, and on top of that, quality of life. In terms of being able to retain talent here, make sure our kids, grandkids don't leave our state. They want to stay in Arkansas and call it home. Quality of life matters. And so investing in the outdoors, access to outdoor recreation is critically important from each one of those standpoints.
So I know there's been different things that have been happening, like opportunity zones, but what would you sort of say what are some of the things that you're saying? Because I know I guess you're very active in this space and really a leader for the state. What are some of the things that are some of the good ideas that are either being worked on or have been implemented that you see that can help drive those numbers up for us?
You bet. So Sarah launched what's called the Natural State Initiative when she first came into office. I chaired the Natural State Initiative. And really the idea is we need better collaboration, not just in terms of state government, various agencies, whether it's state parks, Office of Outdoor Recreation, Game and Fish, but beyond government, whether it may be the Nature Conservancy, it may be the Walton Family Foundation, Arkansas Parks and Rec Foundation. I wanted to bring all the stakeholders, both in and outside of government, to the table together. And so there's an advisory council, 17 people representing all those various stakeholders that meet on a regular basis. And really, it's about improving collaboration and then casting a vision. We're the natural state. That's our identity. We should lean into that. And how can we improve access to outdoor recreation here in the state? So from the infrastructure side, what I was really interested in taking a look at, you mentioned state parks. I went to all 52 state parks the first year Sarah was governor. We identified 4 state parks that we should really lean in on and make major capital improvements there. Number 1 at Queen Wilhelmina, Gary, who you mentioned earlier, has been critical in terms of really implementing Tom and Stuart Walton's vision for Bentonville and mountain biking, as well as the monument trail systems at our state parks. And I remember the first time I met, and every time I've talked to him since then, he's been saying it's Mina. We've really got to build a world-class lift-served downhill mountain biking park at Mina. It's the only destination in our state that really checks all the boxes. You have the elevation there. It's after Mount Magazine, Rich Mountain is the second highest mountain in our state. And you've got the town of Mina right at the base to supply really the workforce that you need to operate a lift-served downhill bike park. And for those who aren't familiar, it's basically, a small ski resort. Most ski resorts now, or not most, but a lot of them now, of course, have downhill mountain biking during the summertime. What we can do here in Arkansas, of course, is have a year-round lift-served downhill mountain biking park. The Waltons are building one in Bella Vista called Oz Bike Park that will be open next year. We passed legislation to make that possible. As well as the lift-served downhill bike park that we are now about to start building at Mina. It was a lengthy process to get approval from the National Forest Service because we're taking in about 8,000 acres of the National Forest.
Are you really? And you got it through?
Land. Yeah, we got it done. And it's now been absorbed. So Queen Wilhelmina State Park, which has a lodge, sits at the peak of Rich Mountain, has gone from 500 acres now to 8,500 acres. It's a 100-year lease. And we are going to start construction. We're in the design phase now, but we're about to start construction of the bike park. There'll be a high-speed quad lift, Probably roughly in phase one, about 25 miles of downhill trails. And like I said, it'll be open year round. This will be a destination for anybody that's into downhill mountain biking. It'll be a destination for people from all over the country. And I really truly believe it'll revitalize the town of Mina and set an example for how investing in outdoor recreation can really bring some of these small towns and rural communities back to life.
Do you think there's an opportunity to combine some of them? So this may be a little abstract or obscure. There's a group that just happens to be out of Crested Butte, Colorado called 11. And what they've done is they've combined, in their case, high-end backcountry skiing and fishing. Mm-hmm. And so one of the reasons that we started Jackalope was to take that view, but sort of combine fishing, hunting, but cycling together. And so we've been thinking about, and we've been in discussions with, acquiring one of the different outfitters on different rivers, and the idea was to kind of bike shops. We haven't got it dialed down, but I'm just curious if you've seen examples where people have combined certain things in certain places. I mean, I guess Horseshoe Canyon, up near Jasper might be something where you've combined a couple different things. Do you see other examples that people are trying to do?
Yeah, and I think Horseshoe is a good model. I've actually stayed at an 11 property in Iceland.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah, a few years ago. It's incredible, but and I love what they're doing there. I mentioned Mina. The other 3 state parks we've really leaned in on are Petit Jean, the Maumelle Pinnacles, which extends from really downtown Little Rock on the River Trail out to Pinnacle Mountain State Park, and then out to the National Forest along Lake Maumelle, Rattlesnake Ridge, Blue Mountain, and so forth. And then finally the Delta Heritage Trail, which is rails to trail connecting Helena 90 miles across the White and Arkansas rivers to Arkansas City. Those are the big 4. And I think to your point, what we really need to do, and it's one of the reasons why we passed the opportunity zones, which you mentioned, we've got to incentivize private businesses, private investors to come in, and really dial in the experience
right.
for people, particularly people who really don't know, like once they get there, how to do it.
Right.
And that's of course very common if you go to Colorado or Utah. You can pretty easily find an outfitter that will guide you so that you have an amazing experience. I want to post about it on social media, share it with your friends, and drive that. I think one thing that we still need, and we're setting the table for it, but certainly from the private investment side really need to focus on, is those experiences. At Petit Jean, we're building a Via Ferrata there, expanding rock climbing, doing a new monument trail system. We have an outfitter already in place on the rock climbing side. The Via Ferrata will not open until probably summer of next year. But having that outfitter there for somebody who doesn't really know much about rock climbing to be able to walk in, the lodge there at Petit Jean and just sign up, and you have a guide, and they're taking you out there and they're teaching you how to rock climb. They're taking you through the Via Ferrata. That's critically important, particularly for that first time user who wants to do it but just doesn't know how.
Right. And so for those people that don't know, explain a Via Ferrata.
So I've only done one. It was up in British Columbia. But really the best way, Via Ferrata is Italian for Iron Way.
Yeah.
And you probably know this, but they're very common in the Alps, and they were built during World War I to transport troops across super rugged, dangerous terrain in the Alps. And it's iron holds, like on the kind of the cliff, or the mountain face, where you're roped in and you're able to safely climb and navigate, like a very dangerous area with a lot of exposure. And of course, they served a military purpose back in World War I, World War II. Well, now they serve an outdoor recreation purpose. There are thousands of Via Ferratas across the Alps. Some are guided, some are not. But it's a great introduction to rock climbing. It's much easier than most rock climbing is. And for somebody who's never done it before, it gives you kind of that exposure, that kind of adrenaline rush, but you feel more secure because you have those iron holds in the rock to climb. And so we'll be doing that at Petit Jean, as well as, of course, opening up. There's from our climbing consultant, we've worked closely with Dennis and Elms, who you may know is a big climber up in Northwest Arkansas. There's 30 routes now open at Petit Jean. They'd never had rock climbing open at Petit Jean before. He says there's as many as 2,000 routes at Petit Jean. It is a world-class climbing destination that simply hasn't been open to climbing before.
I started climbing in Arkansas in the 1980s at Sam's Throne. And been in a lot of different places, but you're absolutely right. One of the challenges of something like rock climbing is that, so often it's hard. Like here in the Russell area, we've got Dardanelle Rocks, but if you're not a good rock climber, you're not just going to go there and like get on there. And you'd really have to know what you're doing. So it doesn't have sort of an entry ramp into that very easily. I'm going to switch gears for a second. I'm curious in terms of all the outdoor stuff. Do you get involved in any sort of the different controversies around the flyway for the ducks or, other things that people want to care about from a hunting perspective?
Yeah. So I work closely with Game and Fish. Unlike state parks is part of Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism that reports to the governor's office. Game and Fish is a constitutionally independent agency.
Right.
The governor appoints to the commission, but they're independent. And so it's not like we can dictate to them what the agenda is or what they should focus on. But we have a great working relationship with Game and Fish. Doug Schoenrock is the new director there. We are so fortunate to have him. He's the former president of Ducks Unlimited. He was a business executive in Alabama, one of the Sara Lee companies. He had retired and decided, this is not for me. And when George Dunklin, who's his best friend, reached out to him, like, you have any leads? Because we need a new director because it's vacant. Doug's like, you know what? I'm not really enjoying retirement all too much. He'd been retired for maybe a couple months.
Right.
And so he's like, I'll do it. And he moved to Arkansas. He's now our director. He's outstanding. We're so fortunate to have him there. And we have a great working relationship with Game and Fish, both the director of the office and the commission. And the Flyway, of course, I mean, it's one of those things where it is such an important just way of life.
Right.
It's part of our identity, duck hunting. Like it truly that we have some of the absolute best duck hunting in the world. And the Flyway, one of the risks that's come up, I say one of the more recent controversies around windmills. I have nothing against clean energy at all. But the windmills in particular do pose a threat to the Flyway if we end up with too many of them.
Sure.
And so that's one area where, my wife, Sarah, and I know a lot of people that are active in conservation and care deeply about the Flyway have taken a strong stand on that. The Flyway is not going to be a place where we're building hundreds, or if not thousands of windmills and completely disrupting something that's so vital to our state.
Well, one of the things that it's one of my experiences. So a lot of times when, we'll host a lot of events for politicians here. And one of the things that happens so often is the questions people really want to ask, are about hunting. Somebody will say like, hey, what about this place over here? I'm curious if you got an opinion or you hear anything about mud motors.
No, that's not something I've heard a whole lot about. Explain to me.
Well, a mud motor is a boat that essentially allows you to get in like 1 inch of water, and so a lot of times what people have been complaining about is that, people will take the mufflers off on them and just scare a bunch of ducks around. A lot of times they blame it on young guys that are going around, but, so I'll hear a lot of people kind of talk to me about that.
Yeah. I mean, you hear that from Game and Fish commissioners and from Doug that we've, it's a delicate balance on the enforcement side. Like on the one hand, as far as conservation is concerned, like we need to have, good rules in place that are followed. And of course that requires enforcement. But at the same time, we don't want to be so heavy-handed that we are deterring young people from wanting to be outdoors and hunting and fishing. And I think it's a very, very fine line, on that front. You certainly hear that in some of our green tree reservoirs that, it's gotten a little bit out of hand, particularly with some of the young people. Frankly, I get it, but at the same time, I love the fact that young people are that passionate and getting out there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to get in line and are actually there to hunt and experience it. It's one of the biggest challenges I think we have in this space is getting kids off screens and outdoors. And the average kid is spending 7 hours a day in front of a screen and 7 minutes in unstructured play. And that is a real problem that we need to reverse. Yeah, no question about that. I'm curious, this is a little more on the fun side. In your experiences duck hunting or deer hunting with your boys, we've been here debating quite a bit about whether or not certain species are here in the state or not. So for years, people were talking about, are there panthers in the state, or are there mountain lions? But I'm just curious if have you seen any black panthers while you've been out there? No, but one time out on the Buffalo River, I was with Austin Albers, who owns the Buffalo Outdoor Center, and he says, and I believe him, he's a member of the Natural State Initiative. He says he's seen not one but two black panthers out there, in the upper Buffalo. So, I mean, there you have it. Of course, we know we have mountain lions in the state. They're on game cams. There was one that was, of course, run over not too far from Little Rock. I think it was down near Malvern earlier this year. So they're here. The question is how many? The Game and Fish estimates roughly 100 or so at any given time, and they would argue they're traversing the state. They're not reproducing here. But I'm not sure if anyone really knows. So
here's my last question. So, and this is just fun. I'm just curious. So, being in as first gentleman, tell me what the most interesting experience has been so far doing that.
Oh man, that's a good question. It's I told this story earlier. It's hard to know because I've been involved in campaigns my whole career. It's how my first job out of college. I worked for a U.S. Senator and worked on campaigns ever since on the consulting side. Right, doing polling, message development, advertising for campaigns all over the country. And so I've always kind of been very familiar with campaigns, kind of the rhythm of a campaign and that life, really my whole career. But now I'm on kind of the other side because I'm more out front. I've always been behind the scenes. Right. And so to be out front, for my wife to have her name on the ballot, for her to be accountable for the decisions she's making, leading the state, and to be a little bit more out front myself. I'm still mostly behind the scenes on things. The only thing I really get out front on is around my initiative and conservation and outdoor recreation. But, it's so different to be, and there's a weight, certainly my wife experiences it on a day-to-day basis. There's a weight on your shoulders, given the expectations and the needs of people in the state. Sure. No matter how good things are, and things are getting better in Arkansas, we're improving education and public safety. Our economy's growing. We've had back-to-back quarters where we've led the nation in economic growth. We're number one for lowest cost of living. All of those are good things. But there are still a lot of people out there that are hurting right now. Yeah. And it's mainly driven by the inflation we've had in this country over the course of the last 5 years, and the fact that the cost of living has not come down. And so that there's a weight on your shoulders knowing that there are people out there that are in crisis, that are hurting, that are going paycheck to paycheck, and they really, desperately need help and support. And so that definitely weighs on you. But in terms of things that, have most surprised me, this role, it's a humbling one. To be the first gentleman of the state. Right. And people ask me what that's like, and I tell the story of I read an interview one time. Margaret Thatcher, who was Prime Minister of the UK in the 80s, her husband was asked in an interview, who wears the pants in your relationship? And he's like, I do. Yeah. I also wash and iron them. And it's just like every day is a new, humbling experience, which is probably good for me. It's an important quality to have in life, and I've certainly learned it, whether I like it or not. In this role, I was walking through. We had the 75th anniversary of the governor's mansion a few weeks ago. All the former living governors, including Bill Clinton, who was there with I saw the pictures with Hillary Clinton. It's the first time Hillary had been back to the governor's mansion in 25 years. They could not have been more gracious and kind. It was wonderful having them there. But we walked through ahead of the dinner at the governor's mansion. We were walking through there's an exhibit at the old State House Museum downtown that features, the first families. And there's a first ladies exhibit, and there's all these gowns from the inauguration. And then there's a little plaque for me up on the wall that gives a short version of my bio and then says something along the lines of how progressive of a move it is for Arkansas finally to have a first gentleman. Well, I got to say, just a shout out for this. I saw some video clips of that night, and one of the things I was really proud of is that it looked like that everybody was gracious, and everybody talked favorably about each other, and I think that's so needed at different times. So I don't know if that was like the way the whole way, but it sounds like it was. It sounds like I've only heard good things about it. And I also would say that, to your point about people hurting, one of the things, even here in Russellville, our numbers, I'm involved with a church where we have, we feed people, and the numbers have been way, way up, and so while some people are doing really well, there's plenty of other people that are hurting. So I think you're right on point on that. Yeah. I mean, on each of those points, to have all the former living, our country right now is so divided. It's so partisan. It's one of the reasons, frankly, that I chose this initiative to focus around conservation outdoor, because it is one of the last remaining kind of nonpartisan issues that you can tackle. I don't even know how half of the people on my Natural State Initiative Advisory Board voted. Probably didn't vote for my wife. I mean, a lot of them are Democrats.
Right.
And that's fine. Like, we have common ground around conservation outdoor, and we work great together. And I think I would hope that, in the future, we're able to find more issues that we can work across the aisle on. But having all the former living governors there, you had, former President Clinton, you had former Governor Beebe, former Governor Hutchinson, and along with my father-in-law.
You can't miss it.
He would come back from Israel for his first time back in Arkansas since he deployed there in March. And then Sarah. It was actually amazing how well, despite some political rivalries they've some of them have had over the years, how well they're all up on stage together. Sarah moderated the Q&A.
Right.
And the one thing that really shines through in that moment is how much each of them just absolutely loved the state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
And how unifying that was to see them up on stage and having so much pride in our state, and such a deep and love and appreciation for our people. It was actually a really great event, and really one of the highlights, I think, that we've had during Sarah's time as governor. It was amazing.
Excellent. Bryan Sanders, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, I'd love to come back and
we'll have to do some cycling.
Privileged to be here. Yeah, anytime. I'll come back up to Mount Nebo and we'll ride.